I'm battling William and Kyle, and I'm like, gosh, I knew this is kind of how it was going to play out. And so I got around William with about 25 to go ish, and I just knew that the 5 car tends to it tends to trend loose as runs goes. He typically runs his cars a little bit freer. So I knew my advantage was I needed the race to go green. I knew that I was superior on the long run. I'm typically that way anyway, but I knew that our car throughout the day had really started to be good after 25 laps. Well, as a driver, I can see Kyle starting to struggle. Like, even though he's, at the time I was looking and I rewatched the last 25, even when I was about 1.2 seconds behind him, 1.3, I could see him struggling on that. You could just see the back of his car just barely twitching. And I'm like, oh boy, that ain't going to get better. It's going to just get worse as the race goes on. And so my car trended that way as well, but I wasn't as free as he was. So at that point, I'm like, this is going to be a slow grind. And it was. I gained just barely a little bit each lap. And then I got it to about 6/10. And then he had one corner where he slipped up a little bit, got loose, got into the turn 2 wall, and it put me right on his bumper at that point. I think it was 2/10 or 3/10 behind. And I still kind of maintained that for a few laps. And I'm watching his car, and I'm starting to size up, where is he weak? How am I going to create a run where I can get beside him? Because that's going to be the difficult part. And the advantage for me, though, was that since my car was superior to his at the end, he wasn't able to aero block as much as he could on new tires. So I then can move around the racetrack because when you're loose, you're tied to whatever lane can keep you in control of your car. And for him, it was right up against the wall. That's where he had to be to use the air to help tighten his car up. So he's manipulating his car handling by changing lanes and finding, all right, this is where I'm running the fastest given my car's potential. Well, I had a little bit more maneuverability, so I can move around and avoid traffic a little better than what he could. So fast forward to about 6 or 7 laps to go, I get right to his bumper, and then I start, inside of 5 to go. I get a run on him in the middle of 3 and 4. I could run a little bit. I could run mid-track where he had to run high, so I knew that he wasn't going to be able to run down there and aero block me. So I got a good run, got beside him, and I'm like, just barely squeezed, and I'm going down the front straightaway, and there's J.J. Ailey and I think Todd Gilliland that were about to lap, and I'm just praying because they had just run the high line, the corner before, and all of a sudden, the 15 pulls down and runs now the low line in turns 1 and 2. And as the leaders, you just hope that they're consistent, right? And that, whatever run your line, we'll get around you. Let us decide how we're going to get around you. You can run your line, whatever it is, just be consistent with it. But the 15 pulled down, and it shut my air off on the bottom because I was on the bottom of Kyle in turns 1 and 2. So then, bam, Kyle re-clears me, and I'm like I know it's going to take another lap and a half to formulate a run. So the next run didn't come till about 3 to go. I got position again on him. I think that was in turns 1 and 2, but I couldn't. He cleared me again. And I'm thinking, well, now I just got to think about when I'm going to make my last run at him. So 2 to go, entering turn 3. I ran a super high line on entry. So all I'm thinking is I got to get the best run I can. So the most vulnerable Kyle was in turns 1 and 2. That's where he was the most free. He had to run the highest line was in turns 1 and 2. So I coming to the white. So in turn 3, I'm like, I've got to get a big run off of 4 to get close enough to him to pack air on him in turn 1 and 2. Well, I run really high up in 3 and then get a monster run. So then I pull the car down low. I see his car twitching all through 3 and 4, so he is on the edge. And so I get a big run, and I'm going down the front straightaway. We take the white, and I'm like, okay, I'm close enough now that I'm going to drive this thing in there and make him get loose. So all I need to do is shade a little bit left towards his left rear, And as he goes up towards the wall, it's just going to make him looser and looser. And my hope is that I was going to free him up enough where he would kind of nudge into the wall a little bit. Well, he had to slow down so much probably because he was getting loose that it allowed me to get fully side by side with him. Well, during that, I'm still right up against his left side, so he's getting a little loose, and finally we come off turn 2, and I have to lift a little bit because I didn't want to run into him. Like the previous 2 times that I got beside him, I didn't make any contact with him because that's how I wanted to race and pass him. But in the final lap, when they throw the white, I'm like, I have to do whatever I have to do to stop his momentum from clearing me. So he's right up against the wall. I'm right up against his door, and I see that he's sliding up. I'm sliding up. I got to lift a little bit, but I'm like, if I lift more, he's gonna clear me, and this is gonna be probably it. So I looked at the straight on replay, and Kyle, I didn't realize, was up against the wall. He was hitting the wall before we made contact. And so as I'm saying, all right, I'm not lifting, I have to stay right here on his door and left rear, he comes off the wall in turn 2. And what that happened is when he did, like, of course, I didn't give enough room for him to come back down the racetrack when he pulled his car off the wall. So breathed, gave him a little dragon breath on the left rear, and it just barely nicked him, and it sent his car to the right. So that's why you didn't see it really go much to the left, is because there wasn't a hit, like a legit hit or a hook there. He went back right because it makes your car so, it takes all the rear grip off of it when a car is right there on your left rear. And just, I talked to Kyle, and he's like, dude, it was just you just barely nicked me, and it sent my car. But we were both good. And so I go in there, and he hits the wall, and immediately I pull down the racetrack. I'm like, oh shit, if I cause that, I got to get the hell out of here, which I thought was really funny to hear Kurt Busch saying, run, Denny, run.
Kurt, side note, Kurt Busch is hilarious.
He was great.
He's such a homer for 2311.
I thought actually the chemistry between him and Boyer was super good.
Yeah.
And they did a great job at the end calling that race. But yeah, I once he got into the fence, and I just run as low as I could through 3 and 4 to try to make sure he couldn't come back down the racetrack. But I talked to Kyle, and he was like, dude, that's hard racing. That was a great battle. He's like, I thought you were going to probably get me anyway in the middle of 3 and 4 because I was so weak over there. But, certainly I didn't mean to touch him. But I take that back. I meant to touch him, but I was trying to slow his momentum and do almost the same thing that he did to Kyle Busch at Chicagoland during that whole slide job era. So he went up and he forced Kyle into the fence to try to slow his momentum so he couldn't clear. Well, I was trying to do the same thing to Kyle, is like get him up there to make it so where he couldn't clear me off of turn 2. But, it was just, you see the straight on shot. It's just, he comes down the track after hitting the wall, and my right front fender just, slides on his left rear just barely enough to get him loose.
What does that feel like as a driver, both
Nothing.
for you and Kyle?
I felt nothing. I couldn't even tell at the beginning, did I even make contact or not? It was so light. But from Kyle's standpoint, he said he was out of control the entire time off of turn 2. A lot of that was because I was so close and up against his door as he's rubbing the wall. So he was sideways anyway. And then when I brushed him there, it just set his car right over the edge.
So you're just like this with the steering wheel. It's just so difficult in racing for the average person to get a grasp of what that feels like, right? Like, what it's like to throw a football, throw a baseball.
Well, I'm in this cocoon, right? I can't really see much over my right side headrest, but I know that I need to do everything I can to keep my right front as close to his door as possible off of turn 2 to create his car slowing down. So the closer you can get in a side draft, the more effective it is. So I'm trying to slow him down with momentum by getting into his left side door and just getting as close as I can. And he is trying to avoid that by staying as far right as he can, which means getting up close to the wall. So it's just a balance there. And to me, it was super close to what him and Kyle Busch had at Chicagoland years ago. Only the difference is the cars were different. These cars are a lot less stable in the back. that was during the 550 era NASCAR package. So it was a fun battle. Of course, it was from my standpoint. I won. He finished second, but I was just glad to see him be able to finish second versus it actually taking him out. So again, it was. I talked to him. We're all good. He was good. He enjoyed the battle, and certainly I know that he'd been frustrated over the last X amount of races being taken out by others. Others' doings, and it was great. Certainly if I'm him, I'm frustrated. Because
are you frustrated with yourself or how the
I don't know, right? Because
out?
I don't know, because he clearly knew that I was the faster car. He didn't even know. He thought maybe I was probably going to get him in turns 3 and 4 anyway. But he would of course like to seen how that played out. I can't really speak for him, but certainly if I'm in his position, I'm like, dang it, like. You didn't give me a chance to battle through 3 and 4, but certainly I wasn't trying to hook him down the straightaway, which I didn't hook him. It just the circumstances of brushing him in that spot of the track caused it to happen.
Right, but in his position with 25 to go, he knows that you're coming, right?
Yeah.
Is the way to defend that just optimize your lap?
The way to defend it is you got to be faster. Yeah, you got to be faster, and you got to make sure I never get there. I mean, that's kind of the job, right? Is that at the end of these races, we've seen these races and how they end has changed a lot over the years. And we talk about that on this podcast a lot, that if someone has an opportunity, they're going to take it on the last lap. And I certainly knew that when we're getting out of shape in turns 1 and 2 there, I'm not lifting. It's the last lap. Now, I'm not going to deliberately just run into him there, but I'm not going to give him any benefits of the doubt when he's side by side, nor would he do it to me. So I just feel like you're going to take every opportunity. Certainly in my spot I am. And when we're battling side by side there, I've got to keep the throttle wide open. And when he gets sideways, if we make contact, we make contact, and we did.